Imagine, for just a second, that you are standing in waist-deep, murky water.
Oh, that is already a terrible idea.
Right. It gets worse. The sun is setting, the surface is like glass, and then you see it. Just breaking the surface of the water, a pair of cold, unblinking eyes, and this ridged snout gliding silently towards you.
Yeah, that is pure nightmare fuel right there.
Exactly. You are face to face with a prehistoric apex predator. And in that exact moment of sheer panic, you probably aren't wondering what specific species of crocodile is looking at you.
No, you're just thinking about how to get out of the water.
Obviously, but based on our deep dive today, knowing exactly what is in the water with you completely changes the rules of engagement.
It really does. I mean, when we look at these animals from a distance, or on a screen, human nature tends to just lump them into a single category of danger.
Like a crocodile is a crocodile, right?
Exactly. But delving into the evolutionary mechanics of these creatures reveals that they are highly specialized machines. The environment really shapes the predator.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are pulling our insights from this incredibly detailed breakdown by Apex Truth, and we're untangling the identities of two of the most formidable predators on the planet.
The Nile crocodile and the saltwater crocodile?
That's the one. We are going to explore the mechanics behind their sheer size, the biological anomalies that let them conquer totally different parts of the globe, and how they execute their ambushes.
It's essentially a masterclass in understanding how a 200-million-year-old biological design still absolutely dominates today.
It really is. So to really grasp how they operate, we first have to understand the physical framework they're working with, right?
Yeah, we frequently hear the word massive thrown around in wildlife documentaries, but we really need to quantify what that actually means for their biomechanics.
Let's put some numbers on that framework. Let's start with the saltwater crocodile, or the salty, as they're called in Australia.
Right, the salty.
This creature holds the official title of the largest living reptile on Earth. Adult males routinely hit 14 to 16 feet long.
Which is already huge.
But it gets crazier. The older apex individuals can stretch past 23 feet and weigh up to 3,300 pounds.
Wow.
You are essentially looking at an animal that outweighs a Honda Civic, just navigating a river system.
A Honda Civic with teeth, that's just wild. Now, the Nile crocodile operates on a similar, though slightly different scale.
Okay, how so?
Well, they average between 11.5 and 16 feet, generally weighing up to 1,650 pounds.
It's a bit smaller on average.
Right, but their genetic potential allows for these freakish anomalies. The largest officially recorded Nile crocodile was found near Mwanza, Tanzania.
Oh, I read about this one.
Yeah, it measured over 21 feet long and weighed 2,400 pounds.
Okay, wait, I have a question about this. If the salty can reach 23 feet, it has to be the undisputed heavyweight in every scenario, right?
You would think so, yeah.
Because it just seems mathematically impossible for a shorter Nile crocodile to outweigh or outbulk a salty if we were to put a 15-foot specimen of both species side by side.
That assumption makes total sense on paper, but biology doesn't always scale linearly.
What do you mean?
Well, at similar lengths, the Nile crocodile is actually the stockier, bulkier animal.
Really? Even though it's shorter?
Yeah. The saltwater crocodile stretches out further to reach those maximum sizes. It has a more elongated hydrodynamic profile.
Oh, okay. Like a submarine.
Exactly. But the Nile crocodile packs significantly more mass per meter in that mid-size range.
Yeah.
It has this remarkably robust, heavy, barrel-like build.
So it's wider.
Yeah, it's designed for immense explosive power in shallow riverbanks rather than sustained oceanic swimming.
That makes so much sense. So you have this elongated 23-foot submarine on one side and a slightly shorter, incredibly dense armored tank on the other.
That's a perfect way to put it. And visually, they even wear different camouflage for their respective terrains.
Right, the Apex Truth Breakdown mentioned this. The Nile has this yellowish-brown, kind of olive tone. It's heavily scaled to mimic the muddy, chaotic banks of African rivers.
Yeah, they blend right into the mud.
And it also has that classic fourth lower tooth that visibly juts out even when its mouth is completely closed. It just looks incredibly intimidating.
Oh, for sure. Whereas the salty is darker, gray to almost black on top with a much broader snout.
And they have those distinct bony ridges, right? Running from the eyes down to the nose.
Yep, those ridges are a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
But despite those visual differences, which are direct adaptations to their hunting environments, they both share the ultimate ambush adaptation.
The placement of their sensory organs.
Exactly. Eyes, ears, and nostrils all situated high up on the very top of the skull.
It's such a brilliant design. This cranial architecture allows the crocodile to submerge, like 99% of its body mass?
Easily, they just become this microscopic blip on the surface of the water.
Totally invisible to prey.
Completely invisible, while their sensory organs remain above the waterline, basically running full surveillance.
Now, given that they are both these massive, heavily armored predators, you might assume they'd cross paths and compete for resources.
Yeah, you'd think there would be some overlap.
But their domains are completely isolated from one another because of a really fascinating biological adaptation.
Right, so the Nile crocodile is the undisputed ruler of African freshwaters. They span across 26 different countries in sub-Saharan Africa.
That is a massive footprint.
It is, but they are intimately tied to rivers, lakes, swamps, and marshlands. Their physiology is entirely tethered to freshwater ecosystems.
Which makes this one odd detail from the sources stand out even more.
Oh, the Florida thing.
Yes, the Florida thing. There is a small breeding population of Nile crocodiles living in the swamps of the Florida Everglades right now.
Which is just terrifying.
It is. And this wasn't some natural migration. This was the result of the exotic pet trade in the United States.
Someone actually kept one of these as a pet.
Unbelievable, right? Humans essentially dropped a 2,000-pound African apex predator into a North American swamp.
Wow.
But from a biological standpoint, the fact that they survived and actually established themselves in Florida is a terrifying proof of concept for their ecological plasticity.
Totally. The climate and the freshwater layout in the Everglades mimic their African home just enough for them to seamlessly slot in at the very top of a foreign food chain.
Right. But as you said, that ecological plasticity is strictly within freshwater. They are totally bounded by the ocean.
Exactly. Now, the saltwater crocodile, conversely, commands a territory spanning from eastern India, right through the entirety of Southeast Asia, down into northern Australia.
Which is a ridiculous amount of territory. How do they manage that intercontinental map?
Because of a highly evolved osmoregulatory system.
Right. This is where we get into the superpower of the salty. They possess these highly specialized lingual salt glands on their tongues.
Yeah, because to survive in the ocean, an animal has to constantly fight dehydration.
Right, because the surrounding salt water basically wants to pull all the moisture out of the body.
Exactly. So the salties glands actively separate salt from their bloodstream and pump it out of their mouths as this highly concentrated paste.
That is so weird and so cool.
It's amazing. The mechanism behind this is active transport at the cellular level. They are expending adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, to force sodium and chloride ions against their natural concentration gradients.
Wait, I thought the Nile crocodile had these glands too.
They actually do, but they function at a totally rudimentary level.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, a Nile croc can handle a slightly brackish river delta, but full ocean salinity would just overwhelm their kidneys.
But the salty doesn't have that problem.
Not at all. The salties glands are so efficient that they can live in the open ocean indefinitely without fresh drinking water.
And that one physiological difference explains their entire evolutionary history. The saltwater crocodile basically used the ocean like a global highway system.
Highway is the perfect word for it. They have been tracked swimming over 900 kilometers across open sea.
900, that's insane.
Yeah, they ride the ocean currents to conserve energy, and then they can navigate 100 kilometers inland up a totally foreign river.
So they are true island colonizers, while the Nile crocodile remain a landlocked river monarch.
Precisely. And because these animals dominate such vastly different landscapes, their methods of securing calories have diverged in some really extraordinary ways.
Let's talk about the teeth, because crocodiles actually lack the anatomical ability to chew, right?
Right. They don't have molars for grinding up food or shearing teeth for slicing meat like a wolf or a lion would.
Instead, they use about 66 conical teeth, some up to 5 inches long, and they function purely as meat hooks.
Just massive spikes.
Yeah, the goal isn't to slice. The goal is to grip and never let go. And the engine driving those hooks is genuinely terrifying. The bite force of a Nile crocodile is around 5,000 pounds per square inch.
Which is astronomical.
Just to give you some context, a human bite generates about 160 psi. A lion, the king of the jungle, bites at roughly 650 psi.
So 5,000 is just on another level entirely. But the saltwater crocodile takes this even further.
Really? Higher than 5,000.
Oh, yeah. They hold the laboratory record for the strongest bite of any living animal ever tested.
That is mind-boggling. How is that even anatomically possible?
Well, the anatomy making this possible is a massive overallocation of space in the skull dedicated specifically to the adductor muscles.
Those are the muscles responsible for snapping the jaw shut.
Exactly. These muscles are so dense and so powerful that they can crush a sea turtle shell like it's a potato chip.
Oh, wow.
But interestingly, the depressor muscles, the ones that actually open the jaw, are incredibly weak in comparison.
Oh, right. I've seen that on TV.
Yeah, this biomechanical trade-off is exactly why a human can physically hold a massive crocodile's snout shut with their bare hands.
But a hydraulic press couldn't pry it open once it's locked.
Exactly. Once that vice grips the prey, the crocodile executes the famous death roll.
Because they can't chew.
Right, they use physics to tear the meat. They lock onto the prey, tuck their limbs flush against their body to reduce drag, and just rapidly spin using the massive power of their tail.
The sheer force generated by that angular momentum is staggering. It allows them to dismember prey much larger than themselves into these swallowable chunks.
It is a brutal, strictly mechanical solution to a lack of chewing tooth.
And the targets of that mechanical solution vary wildly between the two species. The Nile crocodile is famous for ambushing wildebeest and zebras during the Great Migrations in East Africa.
Yeah, those river crossings are just chaotic, explosive events.
But because the salty moves seamlessly between the ocean and inland rivers, its diet is entirely different. It includes water buffalo, monkeys, and this blew my mind, sharks.
Oh, the shark thing is incredible.
Saltwater crocodiles have literally been documented ambushing bull sharks in river estuaries.
Seeing an apex marine predator like a shark become prey to a reptile completely recontextualizes the coastal food chain.
It really does. We are so conditioned to view sharks as the ultimate aquatic threat.
Right, the top of the food chain. But the fact that a saltwater crocodile can dominate a shark in a shared estuary really highlights the absolute supremacy of the crocodile's armor and ambush mechanics.
It's like a prehistoric submarine taking out a modern torpedo. But the Nile crocodile has a behavioral trick that is just as paradigm shifting.
The cooperative feeding.
Yes, we generally associate pack hunting and coordinated strategy with mammals, right? Like wolves, lions, or dolphins.
Sure, high-level social creatures.
But Nile crocodiles have been observed engaging in cooperative feeding. They physically work together to block escape routes for fish or mammals at river crossings.
Yeah, observers have actually watched Nile crocodiles form semicircles across a river channel.
Like a net made of teeth.
Essentially, yeah. Some individuals act as a physical barrier, while others actively drive the fish toward the blockade.
That is so advanced.
It really is. This requires a level of spatial awareness and behavioral plasticity that science historically denied to cold-blooded reptiles.
Because we always assumed they were just instinct-driven eating machines.
Right. Now, it isn't a structured social hierarchy like a wolf pack, where there is an alpha and highly defined roles.
So it's more fluid.
Exactly. It's highly advanced opportunistic teamwork. They recognize that by positioning their bodies to cut off a riverbank, the entire collective benefits.
So we have a river predator that coordinates blockades, and a marine-capable predator that literally eats sharks. Both possess a bite force that defies comprehension.
Which naturally leads to the most critical dynamic of this whole deep dive.
What happens when human beings enter their environment?
Yeah, and the intersection of humans and crocodiles provides some extremely sobering statistics.
The numbers from the Apex Truth Source were staggering.
They are. The Nile crocodile is responsible for the highest number of human fatalities annually of any crocodilian species, with estimates running into the hundreds every single year.
Hundreds? That's awful. What is driving that number so high?
The underlying mechanism here is really geographical and economic.
Right. Across rural parts of sub-Saharan Africa, communities rely on the exact same rivers and lakes for their daily survival.
Exactly. People are down at the water's edge, fetching drinking water, washing clothes, casting fishing nets.
They are repeatedly entering the strike zone of an apex ambush predator simply to perform basic chores.
The overlap of habitat is absolute. There's just no way around it. Compounding this, female Nile crocodiles are fiercely protective of their nest sites along these riverbanks during breeding season.
So it's not always about food.
Not at all. A significant percentage of attacks are not predatory but defensive. When human necessity forces constant proximity to these nesting grounds, fatal conflict just becomes a statistical inevitability.
That's heartbreaking, really. Now, the saltwater crocodile presents a very different kind of threat profile.
They do.
If the Nile crocodile's danger is rooted in daily, necessary proximity, the salty is dangerous because of its sheer unpredictability across these vast, changing landscapes.
Right, and that unpredictability stems directly from their osmoregulatory superpower.
The salt glands again?
Exactly. A saltwater crocodile can be hunting in an inland freshwater billabong on a Tuesday and swimming off a popular coastal saltwater beach on a Thursday,
They just move seamlessly through the salinity gradients.
which means they appear in locations where humans feel completely safe. This is exactly why local authorities in northern Australia enforce such strict zoning and warning systems. The predator is completely transient.
And the sources mentioned that salties are also deeply territorial, to the point of what they called hyperaggression.
Oh, absolutely. They will actively attack outboard motors or aluminum boats.
Objects that are significantly larger than themselves.
Yeah, and they have zero intention of eating the boat. It is a territorial displacement behavior.
So they just want it out of their yard.
Basically, yeah. They identify a large intruder in their territory, and their immediate instinct is to crush it until it leaves.
Which raises a really dark question. For a human sitting in that boat, does the biological distinction between a predatory attack and a territorial attack even matter?
Honestly, it's totally meaningless. The mechanical damage inflicted by a 3,000-pound animal is catastrophic regardless of its motive.
Right. The boat is getting crushed either way.
Exactly. However, analyzing these species globally, the Nile crocodile remains statistically deadlier to our species simply because human reliance on African freshwater systems creates thousands of overlapping interactions every single day.
Given how frequently Nile crocodiles come into fatal conflict with humans and, how aggressively humans protect their own communities, it's actually astonishing they haven't been wiped out entirely.
Have we ever pushed them to the edge?
We came incredibly close. During the mid-20th century, both of these ancient species faced industrial-scale slaughter, pushing them to the absolute brink of extinction globally.
But this wasn't a matter of locals defending their villages from attacks, though, was it?
No, not at all. This was entirely driven by the international skin trade.
Ah, for leather.
Exactly. The fashion industry demanded crocodile leather for handbags, belts, and shoes. It created this massive financial incentive to wipe them out across Africa, Asia, and Australia.
It was essentially systematic harvesting.
Right. But the story of their recovery is a profound testament to their underlying biology. When sweeping conservation laws and international trade restrictions were implemented in the 1970s and 1980s, the remaining populations of both species didn't just survive, they exploded back into prominence.
The speed of that recovery is wild. Today, conservation groups list both species as least concern globally.
Which is amazing.
It is. There are an estimated 250,000 to 500,000 Nile crocodiles in Africa today. And Australia alone boasts a really healthy population of around 100,000 saltwater crocodiles.
How do they bounce back so fast?
Well, their ability to bounce back relies on an immune system and metabolic engine that honestly defies belief.
How so?
Crocodilian blood serum contains potent antimicrobial peptides. They can sustain massive traumatic injuries, like I'm talking losing an entire limb in a territorial fight.
Oh, wow.
And they heal completely while living in stagnant, bacteria-rich swamp water.
Without getting an infection. That's incredible.
Completely incredible. Furthermore, their cold-blooded metabolism is so efficient that a mature adult can survive for over a year on a single large meal.
Over a year.
Yep. If they face a drought or a period of intense hunting pressure, they can simply shut down, submerge, and wait it out.
They just outlast the threat.
Precisely. Although it does highlight that while they are globally secure right now, they do face localized pressures today.
Like habitat loss.
Exactly.
Right.
The destruction of wetlands for agriculture, pollution of river systems, severe habitat loss, it all means that in certain isolated pockets, they are starting to lose their grip.
So the modern threat isn't the rifle anymore, it is the concrete.
That's beautifully said. When you pave over an estuary or dam a vital river system, you completely remove the foundational resources that sustain these massive caloric engines.
Right. So to pull all these pieces together for you listening, the world is basically sharing its waters with two distinct, flawlessly designed monarchs.
The Nile crocodile is the heavily armored, incredibly dense, cooperative hunting king of the African freshwaters. It demands absolute vigilance from the millions of people who share its habitat.
And on the other side of the globe, the saltwater crocodile is the colossal, ocean-faring, shark-ambushing emperor of the Indo-Pacific. It is fully capable of moving totally undetected between the open sea and inland swamps.
Just exploring the biology of these two creatures leaves us with a deeply humbling perspective, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
They possess a bodily architecture, an immune system, and an instinctual drive that achieved perfection over 200 million years ago.
200 million, that's deep time.
They watched the dinosaurs rise, and they survived the exact cataclysms that wiped them out. They weathered human industrialization, and they bounced back the very moment we gave them some breathing room.
It's wild to think about. We build skyscrapers, we map the human genome, and we consider ourselves the absolute masters of this planet.
But the moment we step into a murky river or an untamed estuary, all of our technological supremacy just vanishes.
Totally. We are forced to share the water with ancient creatures that view us not as masters of the earth, but simply as a very slow, very soft prey item.
Nature really doesn't care about our egos.
It really doesn't. Keep questioning the world around you, always respect the wild, and think twice before you step into the water. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.